Greetings, this is Chris Ruby, the Nostalgic Catholic, with yet another Isaac Asimov short story. This one is a little bit unusual. As you can see, it is on the pages of Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine. And look at all those patriotic stars and stripes. This is, of course, the August 1976 issue, American Bison, which actually would have come out probably around in maybe late June, early July time frame. So this is very July 4th, 1976, American Bicentennial era, where the American patriotism is very much in its full flower. What a wonderful thing. So, and you can see Asimov's name, Isaac Asimov, and a tercentennial story. That is to say, a story set in 2076. So, they had another story, and these are all mysteries, set in 1876. So, maybe something contemporary. So, why not a story set 100 years later? And having an Isaac Asimov story would be perfect for that. So, indeed it is. And, fortunately, it is mercifully short, sweet. And, but this is just not there. What's there? Yeah, there's a table of contents showing the story there, the Tercentenary in it. The Tercentenary incident by Isaac Asimov, page 39. So, now we get to page 39. There is a blurb followed by the story. Let's read the blurb, since the blurb is not yet reprinted. New, a tercentennial story by Isaac Asimov. Having decided to offer you in this issue not only a story that might have taken place on July 4, 1776, the day our country was born, and a centennial story of events that might have happened on July 4, 1876, it occurred to us, what might our tercentennial celebration bring forth? What might come to pass on July 4th in the year 2076? The thought became father of the deed when we asked Isaac Asimov to peer into the future. Always a dangerous enterprise, but Mr. Asimov was bold enough and brave enough to accept the challenge. So now we take you 100 years into the future, to that fateful July 4th when President Hugo Allen Winkler, any relation to Harry Winkler? The Fonz, man. Hey! Winkler was scheduled to make his tercentennial speech about the awesome problems and difficulties facing the World Federation in 2076. So, that story, and this is one of his real good fiction stories, is gathered up into his collection now. I've showed this, The Bicentennial Man. I am also pointing out, however, it is the last of the stories to be included into this. After this, stories, if collected and collected in normal places, will be gathered up into the volume The Winds of Change. But if this story is at least for one last time still contained in The Bicentennial Man and Other Stories. So it's listed here, table of contents, page 190. Well, okay. So now we go to page 190. There is a little introduction that is worth going through. How did this story come to be written? So, in the fall of 1975, Fred Dane, better known as Ellery Queen, approached me with a very intriguing idea for the August 1976 issue of Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine, which would be on the stands at the time of the bicentennial. He planned to publish a mystery dealing with the bicentennial itself and another dealing with the centennial in 1876. What he needed now was one for the tricentennial in 2076. Yeah, you wrote it as tricentennial. It becomes tercentenary. Okay. Tricentennial in 2076. And, of course, that meant a science fiction story. Since I have been writing numerous mystery stories for the magazine in recent years, these Black Widowers in particular, and maybe some Griswolds, I'm not sure. Anyway, Griswold being a union club. So, at any rate, he thought of me and proposed that I tackle the job I agreed and got to work on November 1, 1975. I ended with an uncompromising science fiction, which I feared might make a little heavy going for mystery readers. Fred thought otherwise, apparently, for he took the story and was even kind enough to pay me a bonus. Okay. So, we have the Tercentenary incident. And what happens? Well, the president gets assassinated on the brink of making a speech. Or does he? It's hard to tell. See, by that point in time, there exist robots, including one made in the form of the president. It can look and act and talk and move and think pretty much just like the president. You probably wouldn't know whether you had met the real president or just the robot. Anyway, it's a big day. It's a huge occasion. He gets out, shakes hands with people. That's all. Yeah, shake hands with the president on July 4th of the third 300 years of America. Let's hope we still have an America that is in America when that time comes. Hope and pray, huh? So, but that president disappears in a puff of smoke as he was zapped with some kind of disintegrator ray. Now, here's this guy, obviously in the employ of the Secret Service, and he's kind of hovering, some distance above the crowd with some rocket belt on his back. It's kind of holding him up in space there, or the sky, so he can kind of look down and get a wonderful, wonderful perch for a fabulously detailed view of everything. Somehow, in all of that tremendous viewpoint, he fails to notice somebody pointing some kind of weapon at the president and zapping him into non-existence. All just fine until suddenly there's a little puff of smoke where the president used to be. Apparently, fortunately, no one else seems to be harmed by all of this. Well, that guy watching from up there, he's really obsessed with all of this. Apparently, the president wasn't a very good one. He kind of signed up to some things that seemed to be regarded as good, you could say. Apparently, the guy it's the narrative is from the standpoint of this guy who's hovering in the sky over everything. He's satisfied that what the president has said he wants to do is a good thing. All right, I don't know what it is, so we just take it at face value. Apparently, the other party doesn't want to do this great and wonderful thing. But this guy makes these promises, which really has, what we need is a strong hand, not a glad hand, so to speak. He's glad handing the crowds, shaking hands, and just having a chance to be, the president on that great occasion. But, as I said, he gets murdered, or destroyed, or zapped, or something. We talk about that a bit. The discussion kind of forms a fair amount of the story. And next thing you know, however, the president is back up on the podium, and he gives this really great speech. We don't repeat the speech. We're just told it's a really great speech. And as the years go by, this president somehow leaves off the womanizing that he had formerly seemed to be known to do. Leaves off some other inefficient activities, focuses totally on doing the job of the president, and doesn't really bang up good job. Brings all these wonderful things about to make them happen, and you begin to wonder: was that the robot that was destroyed, or was it the actual real flesh and blood president? Now, this is in our robot series as we know it. There's no mention of Susan Calvin, or anybody else at the place, but the company that they've worked for, the U.S. Robots and Mechanical Men, does receive brief mention, because I'm thinking maybe those people might be able to figure this out. And there's mention of the first law, because if that's the real president shot, if the robot did that, that would be a rank violation of the first law. But what if maybe either A, the robot didn't know that he was only shooting, that he was actually shooting the president and not just another robot, because there's no robotic law about protecting the life of another robot. Nothing. So one robot could just zap another, and it wouldn't even conflict with its third law, let alone its, you tell it to do so. There's the second law, it knows that it's shooting another robot, another non-human being, so the first law doesn't enter, and the third law only concerns with the protection of itself, not its fellow robots. So you tell it to destroy another robot, sure, no problem. And but maybe that was the president. Well, it's a good discussion, and you're left kind of wondering what happened. And I guess there's kind of a resolution at the end. There's also a little bit of inconsistency, because there is this kind of like a helper, supporter, flunky secretary to the president, who apparently doesn't seem to be willing to own up to how close he really is to the president, or how much he knows. But it's kind of admitted at the end, yes, he knew about this disintegrated weapon. Either he used it or he arranged for it to be used. It's not really clear. And then there's an it. What is this it? Is our main guy that was looking for the sky and trying to warn about this our it? Maybe that was a robot all this time and we never knew. Was this it the man he talked to that is somehow planned to get the real president to spend at least a little bit of time to be where ordinarily he would have employed the robot, because it's such a big occasion he wants to have a chance to do a little bit of real glad handing himself personally? Or is he referring to the president that remains, and is presumably the robot, because unlike the flesh and blood president that probably is what actually got killed, that's what I think happened, the robot doesn't get distracted and really be that strong hand instead of the glad hand that gets the job done. Anyway, it's all kind of interesting and complicated and mysterious, and I'm not satisfied that the explanation really washes. It does have some parallels to a much earlier story titled Evidence, because in that case you also have a duplicate of the president being at least usable for the purpose of taking the place of the president, to the point you wonder whether that is the president or that is his robot. So it's kind of got some of that in common. It's just that the climax seems a little bit less than clear. I've had to read it a couple times, and I'm still not totally convinced I've been able to follow exactly what's going on. Somehow, there's even discussions of zeroth law concepts. Now that's kind of an amazing thing. What if killing one person saves 10 or 100 or a billion? Does that would that change the first law? Well, we don't call it zeroth law, but they do kind of discuss such scenarios in a little bit of a way. So, you are actually getting into some very interesting robotic areas. Anyway, that is our, like I said, the last story to go into Bicentennial Man and other stories. And I think it ends on a good, strong note. Thanks for listening.